Honestly, I just manually do it.
Oh, manually do it? Okay, we'll check this out. This is going to help you manually.
Right,
Ready?
we're doing it from the microphone.
Okay, yeah, I'll do it over here.
Get that audio. And show the camera, too.
All cameras on. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Oh. I got a little bit of beer on the floor.
Is this beer all over the microphone? And everything?
Sorry about that.
No,
Worth it.
Worth it, though. Cheers, mate.
Cheers times 2.
There
Back
we go.
on.
Not sponsored by them, but you never know.
Simpler times.
Spindrift. A real seltzer.
Opie, you're such a good audience member. Yeehaw.
All right. Thank you, Vince, for agreeing to be on this episode of my podcast with me. I'm glad to have you on as my second guest. Cheers.
Oh, I love that sound. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for having me here at the Daily Bugle.
Yeah, of course. I was trying to think of a joke. I couldn't think of it. So yeah,
here we are.
You've been staying at my house, been sleeping in my bed.
And on the couch.
On the couch
I
as well.
slept in your bed one night.
You slept in my bed last night.
It was good. It was nice.
It's
and
comfy.
Matt was not also in the bed. It was just me in the bed. Matt was actually just outside the window watching me sleep in his bed.
That's usually what I do when my guests are sleeping in my bed. I'm outside the window staring in.
You're like, you can sleep in my bed tonight.
But I'm not going to sleep anywhere.
But yeah, your couch is comfy too. Honestly, comfy home. Thanks for letting me stay here while I do stuff.
Yeah. So what are you here in Florida for? Because you currently don't live in Florida. You're from Florida.
Mm-hmm.
You live in New York, but you have flown down. It's your second time in Florida this year so far. You were here in February. Now you're here again in April. I know why you're here, obviously. But they don't know.
Yeah, our viewers...
They may know, they may not know.
Our viewers here and our live audience, doesn't know. So originally I'm from Cape Coral, Florida, which is on the Gulf of Mexico. And it's just that southwest border, Southwest Florida. I grew up there. Then I went to school in Orlando here. And then after school, we could get in all the depth of the story later, but I bumped around a little bit.
Yeah, you were living in Italy.
Yeah.
Kind of working there a bit.
That was kind of while I was still in college. I've stayed in places for a while, so I've stayed in like another country for a month or 2 months here and there while I was in college. But then after college, I went to Utah for a little bit. I lived before even Utah, I was living out of my truck for about 8 months or 6 months or so. I started at UCF living out of the truck, which is a choice, not like I need to live out of my car because I have nowhere else to live. But I was like, man, I fucking hate paying rent, and I'm just gonna sleep in my car and live this way. So I started that at UCF. Then after I graduated, I continued it across the country because I wanted to see what it was like in other places around the country. So I drove over to, first up to Georgia, then Tennessee, then down back to Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas. After Texas was New Mexico, and then Arizona, and then stopped in Nevada. Found a job after 4-ish months of doing that.
East to West Coast.
Yeah.
Almost.
It was about 4 months of no job, but just seeing people I loved along the way, and then also just exploring around, and living out of the truck and camping in forests and going to cities and stuff. Then I found a job in Utah So I was staying in Vegas with my sister at her place, and one of my older sisters, and I then commuted 2 hours to this job in Utah, but it wasn't like an everyday 2 hours. I just had to go there once a week technically because it was wilderness therapy. So I worked a week on, or like really 8 days on, and then I had 6 days off. So I really the commute, was like once every week, 2 weeks kind of thing.
Probably a beautiful drive as well.
Oh my gosh, through the desert. It was gorgeous.
Yeah.
It was like, have you ever read The Alchemist?
I have not.
Paulo Coelho is the one who wrote it, and he also has another book, but he just writes the desert so beautifully, and driving through that reminded me of some of his like enchanting books. But yeah, I'd go between Las Vegas and then St. George, Utah. I was doing that for a little bit, and then I moved to Utah officially. I lived in a room again, in a house, for about a year. Then I went to Indonesia for about 3 months.
Bali.
I was in Bali for half that time, or a little more than half, and then I was in North Sumatra for the rest of the time. I was considering going to try and make a life in Australia for a little bit, but something was pulling me back to the U.S. and specifically to New York City. So as of last year, I live in New York City, and so currently my apartment that I pay for, with like a lot of money for rent, when I share an apartment with people, that's in Brooklyn, and so I live in Brooklyn. But work stuff has continued to pull me back to Florida, for a trip here and a trip there, and the trips are because these experiences here seem to be furthering my career in filmmaking and documentary work, environmental documentary work. And there seem to be opportunities that arise in that path. So I've come back to Florida probably about 3 or 4 times since I moved to Brooklyn about a year ago.
Right.
And then every time, I'm sleeping on people's couches or
people's beds.
In their bed if I'm lucky and someone has an open room and they're really generous. Yeah. So this time specifically I'm here because a documentary that you helped me make last year, Garden of the Glades, Week at Conservation Ranger Camp is the full title.
Shout out.
Yeah.
Check it out on social media, LinkedIn, YouTube, TikTok. It's actually, you can't watch it on any of those places, but it is... it is available in some places like South Florida PBS now. Right.
You can watch it there.
Yeah.
Which is fucking sweet.
That is really cool. I mean,
yeah.
What a full circle from watching PBS as a kid. Different region of PBS, but still. Mm-hmm. That's pretty sick.
Yeah. Super cool. And so I'm here right now. I'm like maybe 60% through a 3-week visit, because there are multiple screenings happening here in Florida over the course of those 3 weeks.
Right.
And so I wanted to be here to support the screenings, and also the people who are holding the screenings want me to be there, and some people are willing to like compensate me for travel. And then I also think that it's important because it builds community connections and opportunities for collaboration in the future. So yeah, in the meantime, I'm very grateful that I have friends like you, who are willing to, hang out and also let me sleep under their roof.
Of course. You're always welcome. It's nice to have you. It was rough for us in March a bit due to some Opie stuff. Opie is Valentino, my dog. He's actually right under the cameras right now. That's why I keep looking here.
Live audience.
But your presence is very well needed, especially for Opie. I think we definitely needed to have someone over, because it's funny. We have someone over like every month. We had our friend Dave in January. You were here in February. We didn't have anybody in March. And now you're here again in April. And you're here for projects that we've worked on.
Yeah.
Which I have to pinch myself, because sometimes I don't really, I don't want to say take advantage, but I don't realize until after that technically, I feel like I'm living the dream, you know, from high school that we're filmmakers. It's not on a big Hollywood production scale, so it doesn't really come across that way. But when we go to the screeners, like we went a couple days ago to the UCF, talking about full circle, because it was just happened to be in the same building that I got my degree from, and we're showing us a film that 10 years ago I started UCF.
Crazy.
And 10 years later, i.e. right now, we're having that screener, which it's a pretty cool thing. I appreciate you for allowing me to be on these projects.
Yeah, dude. It is a crazy thing. It is one of those things where you got to pinch yourself and be like, oh yeah, wait, this is rad. Like this is really sweet. It's I'm grateful.
Really, yeah, especially the Q&As afterwards. It's honestly like, that's the reward. It's not getting the reward of the trophy or whichever one. I mean, okay, I guess it could be nice, but having the feedback as you were asking them and having people come up to you and because that's you're making this stuff for people to watch. Mm-hmm. Like this. You want people to watch it, and when you have people tell you like to your face that they enjoyed it and they got something from it and inspired, like that's the main goal. That's the main reward, right?
Yeah. Totally. I think that like engagement right after the screening is this like golden moment of just pure bliss for me when I can like see people respond to artwork that I've helped build, you know, like craft something that I've taken a lot of time to do. A lot
of hard work.
Yeah.
That editing is a nightmare, and you did a great job for it, by the way.
Thank you. And like, you know, and also, but it's like, yeah, and also pulling together a team of people to put their own artistic spin on each section of it, you know, then to have it all bundled together. It's a big project, that takes time to wrap up. And when it's all wrapped up and you show it to someone, they don't even have like an inkling of an idea of how arduous that process was, like, you know, part of the way through, unless they've made something like it before. Yeah. So they're just like, they see it all. And then when it switches to Q&A and you go up in front of the audience and they're just like, I have a question, or like, I want to talk about this, or like, I really like this, or I didn't really like that, or that didn't really work for me. Like, why did you choose that? Or what was your idea? That engagement, that discussion, that's when, like, to me, I feel really seen. When someone can see my work, I feel so seen, because definitely I'm putting a part of myself. I'm sure you get this too. You probably put it, but when you see your cinematography, you're like, you put a part of yourself in that too.
Blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah, it's all coming from here through this thing and then out of the fingers. Yeah, right, just like that.
Yeah. It's rewarding. I'd say it's self-rewarding, and it's also interesting that I used to be nervous speaking in front of people, especially large audiences, and I still am. But I think that comes from if, let's say, I'm in an audience and they pick at random a person to come up on stage. I would be nervous because I'm not expecting it, right? Mm-hmm. But when it comes to Q&A for something that I made and people are asking things about me, it definitely feels really nice because I'm getting the attention. But that nervousness kind of goes away a little bit too for some reason.
Dude, you seem super natural on stage the other night. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Today's Friday, and we did that on Tuesday night. And yeah, Matt came up after the screening, you know, after the film was done screening, and the audience was like, clappy clap, and you know, we came up and sat up on stage, and they were asking questions, and we were just knocking out the answers back and forth. Probably both of us had maybe like one solid stumble where we just like blanked out for a moment, and we were like, duh.
Yeah, when I could have sworn that one person asked about the comparison of specifically being in the canoe for both of them, and you were answering it, and in my head I'm like, no, she's asking about that, and then you corrected me, and I was thinking, oh, wait, she wasn't. And that kind of made me lose my train of thought. That was at the end of the Q&A.
Yeah, which honestly, in retrospect, like, I could have let her be the one. If she wanted to make a correction, she could. But I knew her. That was, my friend Sandra. And gotcha. When you started talking about being in the, she was like, her question was something that sounds like, you know, when y'all were on the film, you talked about how being in the canoe was something that you had also done from Tales of Sunshine. You had shot video and got sound from being in a canoe. And so the way I remember her question was, were there any other, topics or things on this project where you also were pulling from your experience on Tales of Sunshine? Like, were there any other moments where you were like, oh, this was a practice that we also got from our last project together? Okay, right. And so it seemed like you heard her talking about the canoe, and here we are breaking apart this canoe question.
Yeah. I was like, that's a question I would ask is, how did you practically shoot on a canoe? And you did it twice. So
yeah,
I was like, let's dive into this because that was a discussion we actually had.
Right.
And it is a logistical, we had to actually think through that. So I thought she was actually very interested in that.
Yeah. And you answered it really eloquently. But then I looked over at her and I saw her like kind of make one of those like big smiles. Yeah, and I think I was picking it up and I was like, all right, let me stop Matt here and be like, hey, Matt, I think it sounded like she was asking you this.
Boy doesn't know what.
And then in the moment, Matt was like, oh, well, I lost my train of thought.
Yeah. Awkward sign. That's when but that was also near the end. I think we were past the time anyways, and I was starting to get exhausted.
Yeah, from just answering these questions, and the light was in your eyes. But like, dude, we ran the film was 30 minutes, and the Q&A was like 45 minutes.
Yeah, I was looking at that clock at the top. I'm like, wow, we're going over time, and most people stayed. So that was awesome.
Nobody was getting up, and nobody gave me like the wrap it up finger. So I was like, all right, more questions.
Yeah. So we've worked on many projects now. The project we were just talking about is called Gardens of the Glades. And that came about because we also worked on a previous documentary series together called Tales of Sunshine. But we've also worked on more projects than that. We've worked on a short film for Adam, our friend Adam.
Oh, yeah.
Different roles, though. Because normally you're directing on the camera. This time I was on audio, I think. Yeah, and I also edited it. You were acting in it. Yeah. So it's kind of cool whenever friends, we're working on the same projects, but we kind of change roles, I think it's kind of cool. It goes along that feeling of feeling like we made it in a way, or at least I feel like maybe I'm a successful filmmaker. When you hear about famous filmmakers and their friends, Spielberg is friends. Okay, I'm not comparing myself to them at all.
You can.
Oh, thank you. But it's fun to have a community, I should say, of friends, and we all work on each other's projects. It's a really cool thing. And you see people or at least of at other festivals, and it's just a huge web of connections. And it's really cool.
It's super cool. Like being able to just trade artistic skills with your friends whenever you get an idea. Mm-hmm. If you're like, oh, I want to make something, how can I make it? I know someone who can do that part and someone who can do that part. And then you make the project. And then later that person's like, oh, well, I think I want to make a project too. Can you do this part? And then it just freaking does. It's just amazing.
It literally is like who you know. And that's how it starts is you can have the skills, you can have the talent, but it's hard to do if you don't know anybody.
Yeah. And you can't make these projects alone.
It takes a village.
Yeah, indeed. It takes trust and collaboration and being good to other people.
Yeah. We first started working on Tales of Sunshine in 2020, and I suppose that's when we first really got to know each other, but I've known you or known of you a few years prior when you were at UCF and I was at UCF. Mm-hmm. And you entered the UCF scene about 2017 because you graduated high school in about 2017.
Yeah.
And before that, or during high school, you worked on your Lee County TV show, right?
Whoa. Yeah, you got some lore about me. Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty cool to see your work now and comparing it to what you've worked on in high school. And I have to say, it's sometimes when you see people and you go, he's got it. because I was watching you in some of these videos, and you're a natural narrator. And I was impressed. I was like, this kid's in high school? That's crazy.
When did you see that stuff?
I did my research.
Yeah, you're like, yesterday. And you're like, this kid's in high school? I'm like, no, I'm actually not in high school anymore. But yeah, indeed, yeah, I had some special opportunities that passed through my realm of ambition when I was in high school. When I was in middle school even, I think I was, usually someone who kept my ear to the ground, and if someone offered like a little bit, I would bite. I would be like, yeah.
You're just hungry for opportunity.
Yeah, you got it.
And that, I think, is an important thing, because, excuse me, I'm burping because we had those seltzers. So unprofessional of me. Yeah, it builds those connections, builds that experience, and those little things add up, even if it's a small group project for school. Sometimes you have to make videos for that at that level. It's experience. So what type of, you said that you're biting at little opportunities. What were some of the other ones that you bid at?
I think, I can go back pretty far, but I would say one of the first was, my dad had a lot of like little camcorders because he used to always videotape family outings, like since I was a baby. Mm-hmm. I have 2 older sisters, so he was also doing it when they were babies too. We have a nice...
The home videos collection.
Yeah, we've got a nice collection of home videos.
I know about that.
On the cassette tapes,
Yep.
Or on, not cassette tapes, VHS. Yep. VHS, what am I saying? Something like that. Anyway, when I was in 3rd grade, that's when I was really started to get on the internet.
Okay.
More, which was dangerous. And my... Dad, I remember, I think he might have offered me the camera, or I asked if I could use it, or I took it from him on a trip or something. And then I started videotaping like funny skits, because even when I was in 3rd grade and younger, I used to watch SNL with my family, and we laughed all together and enjoyed, Saturday Night Live. And so I started off making kind of comedy skits when I was in like 3rd grade with a camcorder. And then I kept doing it for a couple years because I learned how to edit on Windows Movie Maker.
Shout out
Windows Movie Maker for being so simple, easy to use.
Yep.
And then by the time I was like that, only a few videos here and there, but I loved hanging out with my friends. And then I started bringing the videos to my friends and being like, what if we made a video together? We should do like the Harlem Shake, or, like something silly, any trending thing. Yeah. Oh my gosh. One time, I think I was in 5th grade, I recorded like my friend and I like fighting with plastic swords. And I thought it was super cool. And I posted on Facebook, and I remember some girl, like Facebook in 5th grade, some girl commented like, OMG, you are so lame. And I was like,
was she wrong?
She
doesn't know what she's talking about.
I deleted that video off Facebook. I think within a short time, I was like, oh, what was I thinking?
You didn't want that Facebook memory 15 years later? Like you randomly popping up on your phone?
I would love that right now. I'd love to watch that video.
I hate when Facebook does that. It's a cringy moment. You're like, oh, I don't want to be reminded of what I posted in 2010.
Mm-hmm. Like a mirror selfie, like trying to be so cool or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, or memes or cringy jokes.
Yeah, maybe some racist stuff.
Yeah.
Definitely was a part of, 4th grade comedy was racist memes. That's true. So anyway, then in 6th grade, I started longboarding.
Oh boy.
Or 7th grade, somewhere around that time. Which is honestly 6th grade, 7th grade, great time of life.
Your personality changed. Probably had a complete pivot.
Towards more like, honestly, kind of towards more relaxing, kind of hippie, or like maybe like Florida man, like chilling out,
skateboarding down the beach trail.
You got it. I lived like kind of close to a river, the Caloosahatchee River.
Yeah.
And
it goes through Fort Myers, right?
You got it. And it's brackish, but it's still really fresh water until you really get to the beach.
Yeah, sharks and gators in there.
Indeed. But I'd go swimming in that brown water, and there'd be a little beach there. And so in a pier that people would fish off of. So I would skate about 10 minutes down to the pier nearby. And oh, dude, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, I was going out with friends. We were longboarding together. There was a clear difference between skateboarding and longboarding, because longboarding was like real chill and everyone would hang out, but skateboarding, you were like trying to be good. You're trying to do tricks. You're trying to be cool, or like do something fucking sick, you know?
Do an ollie, bro.
Yeah, can you do a kickflip, man? And then, but skateboarding never really took off that well in my friend group. Me and another friend messed around with it a lot, but honestly, longboarding was the more consistent thing. Okay, so here we go. 7th grade, me longboarding with friends. I start to, I guess, get more in touch with my like creative side by first learning how to disassemble a longboard.
Oh, really?
And then paint my own longboard. And so I started putting my own designs on my longboard, and then I would assemble it again. And then, and that would include like I do grip tape designs and spray paint and, acrylics on it. And then after doing that, I was like, well, I should bring my video stuff to our longboarding hangouts.
Yeah.
And then we did that. I did that only after the first time I talked to my group of friends, and I was like, we should come up with a group name.
Okay. and wait, let me guess. It was 1 word, 2 words?
It's kind of 4 words.
Okay, I'm not going to be able to guess.
Yeah, I'll tell you. It was Southwest Florida Longboarders.
That actually was going to be my second guess. That was so close.
What was your first one going to be?
It was going to be East Coast Longboarding Group.
That's not bad, but technically I was on the west coast of Florida.
So that's why that wouldn't make sense.
So yeah, we were the SWFL Longboarders, and our YouTube channel is still live. You can check that stuff out. These videos are cool. I edited all the videos. Me and a couple other friends, we'd pass around the cameras to record it as we were, skating.
Yeah.
And then I would edit it together to like fun music.
The mid-90s.
Yeah. It was so fun, and we had made at least like 5 good, 5, in my opinion, they were good. But I mean, nowadays I watch them as an adult, maybe you get a little bored, but they were just music videos, but I would just edit our skate footage to it.
Maybe I should link the YouTube channel in the comment or in the description of this video.
Yeah, link to Southwest Florida Longboarders. Mm-hmm. And then once I started doing that more, that was most of my middle school video time. But at the same time, yes, I was definitely getting more in touch with art stuff then, because at the same time in middle school, I was taking jazz band, a dance class, a digital design class, a drama class. I think those were the main arts electives. It was an arts middle school that I was at, kind of a more artsy, but it was a public school, but it put more funding into arts than it did into sports or whatever.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I'm very grateful for it. I was at that time getting more into like creativity because I was going to a public art school. I was like, it was an artsy school, but it was a public school. It still had kind of, like limited funding, and they were still trying to compete to like be an A school to have all their kids pass all the tests. But more of their funding was directed towards arts teachers. So there was like tons of arts classes that you could choose from, including, well, I don't know about, I guess tons. Yeah, there's like, you could do steel drums. You could do, well, once you got to a high enough level, you could do jazz or wind ensemble. Yeah, steel drums that are like, dunk, freaking sick, dude.
Yeah.
That was cool. And they would raise money by like going around. I never played steel drums, but I thought it was always badass. They had a chorus program, a digital design program where you learned how to use Photoshop. I love that class.
Yeah, I had one of those too.
Photography, like yearbook stuff, of course, and then dance, a lot of different dance classes. Anyway, and violin. Badass. I never did violin, but I thought that was badass too.
But you did play saxophone, bari sax. And you know who else plays Barry sax? I also kind of play Barry sax.
This guy.
It's in my closet right now, but maybe we could have a sax off.
Sax
someday.
off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The old days. I played alto sax in fourth grade through, or I guess, yeah,
Okay.
fourth grade through about seventh grade.
Okay.
And then in eighth grade, my teacher offered me to play the Barry. And the Barry was like a school property, so I didn't have to go buy a saxophone, which was important because...
I was the same exact way.
Hell yeah.
Between 7th and 8th grade, switched from tenor to Barry. Didn't have to pay for it.
Oh, but you were a tenor before.
I was tenor.
Were you tenor like from the start, from the jump?
The start was 7th grade for me. And then next year, 8th grade was Barry.
Such a powerful instrument.
I know. And I wonder why your teacher thought you should do Barry, because when he saw me, maybe because I was a bit bigger, so you can have better, not embouchure, but...
Airflow?
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank. I do not remember my musical terminology. Just breathing, I guess.
Yeah.
Just stronger. And it
Embouchure is a good musical terminology right there.
Yeah. No, the brass instrument, though, the brass people always had better embouchure, I think, because that's how you change your
notes.
Your notes are
crazy.
And that always blew my mind. It's like I liked the saxophone because you had the exact buttons, and the embouchure is just there to kind of guide the tunation of it.
Yeah. I think the embouchure also like honestly determines sometimes whether you were sharp or flat. If you were like all loose up in this, orifice, then it wouldn't really work.
Temperature was interesting because you're outside in Florida, and then you go inside. When you were in middle school, I don't know if you did. It's probably concert band, right? It wasn't marching band.
No, I didn't do marching band, but we did concert band and then wind ensemble and then jazz band and wind ensemble were kind of like the two upper level courses, but we would go play outside sometimes. Yeah. Yeah.
But that difference from hot Florida outside to indoor Florida air conditioning is enough to change the tunation of an instrument, which that's really fascinating to me as well.
Yeah. Neat stuff. But yeah, then I've kind of just been going through history. Is that okay? Is it cool to just keep
that works for
running
me.
Through history?
I actually have some questions about your history.
Yeah.
If you'd like to get into that.
Let's do it. I think so far from where I've gone, so on the journey, we've ended right at kind of 8th grade-ish. And that was, I was mostly doing digital design and playing saxophone and then doing some dance. And then I was making videos outside with friends while they were longboarding and stuff.
Right.
But that was pretty much what I was doing creatively.
So it sounds like there's always been an outlet for you, whether it be digital, it be video, be physical, whatever it is, you have an expression that you need to get out, and you found an avenue for it. And just to jump to where we are now, we talked about it a little bit, but it's cool that you found a lane. It seems to be you're the nature documentary guy. Seems to be kind of your calling and the direction you're going through, which is going to lead into my questions that I have for you. Because going through the deep dive of your filmography, including your Lee County TV stuff, I know you've mentioned this to me before, especially you kind of talked about it when we did the documentary last summer, but you mentioned the project that you made I'm assuming you were in high school, the Teachin' and Beachin'.
Oh yeah. Love that one.
Yeah. I watched it for the first time. I hadn't actually seen it. And that's what I was saying. I'm impressed. I don't know if I'm assuming you shot it.
I did everything on it.
You edited it. It was very well done, and it felt like a very professional news package. So that must be a mix of learning some of those skills and those things from school, i.e. like an example being at the end you have a tag out, this is Vince Marcucci, that you might have learned. But all the other things, when to cut, what to shoot, what to show, that has to come from you naturally. Just your natural filmmaking, telling a story. Does that sound accurate?
Yeah, I would not be able to let myself get away with not crediting the people who taught me those things. Of course. I would say so that package was the last package I made and last news package I made in a 4-year program where I made news packages every month except for the summer.
Yeah.
Every month we had to, it was a one-man band, right? Where you'd go out and find the story, contact the people, you know, get the schedule, like get the shoot on the schedule, go shoot, do interviews, do A-roll, B-roll, and then, you know, bring all the equipment back, and start editing, do the voiceover, do it all within, you had 1 month.
Yeah.
Really a little bit less than 1 month. And then, we were just churning them out. So I had really like one or two mentors. They were like, you know, some supplemental mentors throughout that time, but mainly 2 mentors over the course of those 4 years.
Okay.
Who were actively and like strongly critiquing my work.
So that makes a lot of sense, because you do like, you ask a lot of critique. You actively ask for it, and not everyone does that, especially at the last screening we just went to a few days. I was actually surprised. I liked that question you asked, but you asked the audience, give me some feedback. And whenever we work on projects, there's a lot of feedback back and forth, like actively. And that is important. So it makes sense that you have that instilled into you 4 years. That's freshman to senior year.
Yeah.
Okay. To have those, and I'm assuming those teachers worked in the news business or...
Totally. They were both from the news realm. They were from, they like studied either broadcast journalism, and then they maybe did a little bit of time at a news station.
News.
Yeah. And then now they were working as like, their main job was to be like the telecommunications people, or I don't know if that's the word, but like the news people and video people of the whole school district. They were kind of like the main heads of that.
Really?
And then this program that I worked in was a paid internship that I applied for my freshman year and was hired in. And it was for the Lee County School District. So every month the stories we're looking for were all over the school district. So it was great to have a car, because we would contact the stories and then we drive across the school district to go do stories in like on the other end of the county. You know, that could be in South Fort Myers.
Naples. Right.
Well, Naples started to get outside of our... I think Naples got outside of Lee County schools, but we were between Cape Coral, Fort Myers, and then North Fort Myers, which was kind of this like wild zone. North Fort Myers was like
it's like not quite Tampa. Tampa's still pretty far north.
Yeah, I guess I say North Fort Myers is the wild zone, because it was more spread out, and also there were more
rural.
Yeah, it was more rural for sure. Whereas Fort Myers is like a downtown kind of center and more city stuff. And Cape Coral was just like suburban sprawl. So there were tons of schools, but they were located all throughout this vast suburbia. So anyway, yeah. That's how I started getting into like critique, getting my stuff critiqued. And then also I worked with, you know, a cohort from every year. So when I started as a freshman, there were people who had been working there for 3 years or 4 years, and they were really helpful in, you know, passing on the torch and giving feedback. So then by the time I was a senior in high school, I was doing that I was being a mentor for like, you know, freshman students. But I could see then that intense kind of more critical territory, it was sometimes difficult to be around for sure. But it also rapidly, you know, it caused rapid growth.
Yeah.
For like me, at least.
It shows, because having that regimen, especially at that age, you know.
Consistent. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Every week, come into work, either reach out for stories, write stories, or edit stories every day.
That's a lot of work. And you said you had 1 month to do this. You said it was in paid internships. That's cool. It's technically a job, I guess. Yep. But that is some people's professions. They have to do that in a day, you know, a couple hours. They have to do it in the morning, shoot, edit, have it ready for the evening news, you know. So that's really cool that you had that opportunity to train essentially for 4 years. That makes a lot of sense looking back at how you treat productions with Tale of Sunshine and Garden of the Glades, and even knowing about your other projects. Very well organized, but that persistence, I guess that came from that program.
I would say it partially came from that. Like, in terms of technical skills came from that program, especially editing. That I would say I would credit most of my editing skills from those 4 years of interning.
Yeah.
And that was about, really actually looking back on it, just to put it out plainly, we would go to work 3 days a week for 2 hours each time.
Okay.
Usually we'd end up working more than 2 hours because that's just, it's like, oh yeah, whatever, just write it on your timesheet, you're working more hours
so
today.
you got the extra pay.
So you'd get more
in high school. I'm
most
sure,
of the
like,
time.
hell yeah, let's get some more, overtime. Hell yeah.
Totally. In high school, I was learning how to talk to the HR person, about like getting more hours. So, but it was we get paid, I think like $7.80 or $8 an hour, somewhere in that range.
Yeah. It's awesome you got paid at all.
For sure. No doubt. I agree. And we'd go right after high school, so we'd work from usually 2:30 to 5:30 would be so maybe it was 3 hours, or 2:30 to 5, maybe something 3 to 5 would be our. So anyway, we did that 3 times a week. Unless we had stories to shoot on Tuesday or Thursday, then you would add that in, and your shoot weeks, you'd usually get more hours or whatever. But
yeah,
dude, it was super cool. It was and it's funny. The guy who helped me get that job was at the time dating one of my older sisters.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's a fantastic dude, and we're still friends to today.
Awesome.
They ended up splitting up just because they were like, I guess they were moving into different places, but honestly, he was like, they were mostly just, they were dating, but they were also just friends, whatever. Anyway,
yeah.
I told him I was looking for a job. So when I was in...
So I'm just looking at I'm making sure it's recording.
You're not making like a sneaky eye contact with the camera to be like...
I've already been doing that. Don't worry about that.
So when I was in 8th grade, this is one other thing I mentioned. When I was in 8th grade, I definitely was able to delve into creativity in the last couple of years at middle school, but my parents were talking a lot about, especially my father, to be honest, he was talking a lot about our debt as a family, and like not super, and something that I don't really maybe want to do as a father is talk about debt with my kids when they're like under the age of 15.
Financial debt?
Yeah, financial debt. So like he would talk about how, we just didn't have a lot of money, and money was a big issue, and that would be a lot of like, they would come up a lot around the dinner table. So I knew in middle school that I wanted to try and help in that way, like with covering my own costs. So by the time I was in 8th grade, I was looking for a job. I applied to tons of places. I put in my application all over the place. And I got a few different jobs in my freshman year of high school, and that was just one of them. But that was the one that definitely had the most impact on my creative abilities.
Okay, so it wasn't like you were, I want this. It's just, hey, it's a job. I'll take it.
I would take any job then.
Yeah, and so you just happened to fall in love with it.
You got it. It was funny. So my sister's boyfriend was like, oh, you're looking for a job? He's like, well, we're hiring at Lee Schools TV.
Okay.
And you should come to the boot camp to see if it's something that works for you. So they'd have this like 5-day boot camp in the summer where they're like, do we hire these people?
Weed out all the wimps.
You got it. And I survived, and then, yeah, dude. And then the rest is history.
And now you're here today.
I would add that while the editing and technical skills definitely came from also the shooting skills. Remember when we were on Guard in the Glades and I was saying like count to 10 when you shoot, or count to 8.
Yeah, or 30. I do 30 now because of that.
Yeah, get as long of shots of you as you can so I have the ability to move around and edit. I learned that in high school for sure.
Yeah.
Like through that internship. And then what I was going to say is the culture of feedback that you mentioned on our shoots, that did not come from high school. Even though there was criticism, that job in high school, the criticism that was going around there was kind of like unwarranted criticism. Like you would just show, your video and people would just criticize.
Yeah,
like
it is high school too. So people are probably roasting each other.
Yeah, nobody knew how to communicate like non-violently,
This shit sucks.
Yeah, they were like, what's that sound? That sound is awful. Like, would you ever change that? Is that your voiceover? Yeah, like ridiculous, kind of mean stuff here and there.
Yeah.
And even from the mentors. So then in college though, I would just put it off here, like end it here, is that a job I had for outdoor adventure, leading people on guided adventures, whether it was surfing or camping or backpacking, diving, stuff like that, rock climbing. We would have we had a great culture of feedback, and I learned how to give and receive feedback then.
Really?
Like, and that was more, I learned a different way to use my words. I learned how to use the English language in a kind of more like loving way and supportive way, so that I could give and receive feedback with my coworkers. Because when you're out there, just to put it into perspective, if you're like with a group of 10 college students who have never surfed before, and maybe some of them had never even swim before, wow, you need to really trust your coworkers to be able to like help each other out and cover each other's asses, essentially. So like, we need to know that we're running a tight ship. And if there are any errors, it can cost someone an injury. Like right, someone can get hit by a surfboard. Yeah. I've had students have asthma attacks while they're in the water, wow, yeah, like some scary stuff for sure. So then after the trip was done, we would sit down, and the leaders would give each other really strong feedback, and like including what we really liked what you did, gotcha, what things we think you could improve on.
The little powwows at the end of the day.
For sure. And so I would take that and be like, let me put that into our film crews as well, because it also, I think, inspires rapid growth.
Yeah. And at this point, whether it's a project or if it's an organization, whatever it is, I expect there to be, like, if there's a whole event, I expect there to be a powwow at the end of the day. If it's just, hey, we had an entire day of an event, that we organized, and it's done, okay, and we just go our separate ways. It feels weird. Like, I feel like there should be a conclusion. Like, hey, this went well. Even if it's, hey, y'all did great, goodbye, right, at minimum. But having that feedback at the end of the day is expected from me. I like that.
Closure, it sounds like you're saying.
Exactly. Closure. It's a form of closure, and then you can reflect on it. And it's interesting because at work right now, I'm watching those videos, and a lot of them are about managing and about feedback. And it's really interesting because a lot of the things I'm hearing in that, I'm like, I already know that. But some of the things I'm learning. And it's interesting because some of the things they've mentioned, I immediately think about you and our projects, and I have real life experiences to relate to what those videos are even saying about just giving back or giving feedback. Even this last episode of The Studio that I watched last night, the whole episode was so frustrating because it was all about this one character who's the head of the studio. He has to give feedback to Ron Howard, but he doesn't want to because he doesn't want him to get offended. And so he's telling other people, and they're all pointing their fingers. It takes a whole episode to do it. But really, all you have to do is just have a conversation. I think there might be emotion. There might be anger. It's interesting that one of these videos said you kind of have the 5 stages of grief sometimes when you get feedback. And that was interesting because I kind of felt like that when we did the documentary last year, especially that first night, when it was crazy with the archery and all that. When you give the feedback, at first I was upset at myself, I was angry, like all these feelings, and at the very end I'm like, you're right, and I'm glad you did that, because had you not, the rest of the week may have been just like that. So it's actually important to give feedback. So anybody who has feedback on this podcast right now, leave it in the comments and dislike this video.
Plug that in. Nice.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, totally. Feedback is crucial for teams.
Yeah.
I think like it's kind of funny. It makes me, what your like plug right there makes me think of kind of the feedback online. Sometimes I wonder about how wild it is. Like when I go to view reviews for like, I've been looking for like a hotel room in St. Pete for us to stay. Reading reviews is like hilarious, especially because I'm looking for like anything under $100, which is like not common to come by unless you're down with like rats and roaches to be living with you.
Raccoons in your room.
Yeah, fucking crazy. It's like still $90 a night for like to live with roaches. Like that's great. I mean, not just roaches, but like like open windows, like cracked windows, like
meth addicts.
Yeah, bed bugs and shit. Like people posting. Honestly, the reviews sometimes for hotels actually like are just like interesting to me. I'm like, they're like more exciting for me than like scrolling through social media. I'm like, let me go, because people are posting pictures of like their son with bed bugs bites on his back, and they're like, we had to deal with this for months after.
That's crazy.
Like, oh fuck, that's so intense. Yeah,
that reminds me that this was 10 years ago. We were in Miami. We had some friends fly in from Scotland, and their kid, 3-4 years old, he went into the pool, the hotel pool, and he got out and he had some sort of reaction to the water. Maybe it wasn't chlorinated correctly. It was one of those, hotels that we're talking about.
A little sketchy.
So, yeah, don't go in the hot tub either. Yeah, I like looking at reviews sometimes for restaurants, and the 1-star reviews has nothing to do with the restaurant. It was something like, yeah, my car got broken into in the parking lot. Like, yeah. And then now that restaurant gets hurt because you had a negative review that had nothing to do with the restaurant. It was just your experience. Opie, stop eating your butt. Opie. Oi. No.
Who's a little butt eater?
I would like to draw this back to the topic we're talking about here. I am interested in this Lee County television project that you had because it seemed like a great source for experience. Yeah, let me grab a sip real quick. But I have one more. I have a question too.
Mm-hmm.
So when you guys did the Lee County TV video, it was sort of like maybe the trailer or as a promotional. It was you and a bunch of other students back to back explaining what they are. And at the very end, there's a group shot of all of you guys looking at the camera. How many takes was it for you guys to say your story?
I don't even know what video you're talking about, but
Really?
I imagine it's one of our episodes. So what we did is I told you the way that we would go and get these stories, and that was through, monthly we'd gather the story. Once the story was gathered, and we have at least 5 people working per month, so now you have 5 stories. Every month, one of us was designated on top of our story to be the episode editor. And then what we would do is we would so the network is called Lee Schools TV. The TV show that we put on was called Current Lee.
Okay.
Very catchy.
Yeah.
Currently had episodes, and I imagine that's what you're talking about, one of the episodes. And so within one episode, you would have maybe like 4 news packages or 5 news packages that were made from that month, or maybe the month before. And each student, someone like me, would introduce their story, and we called that a stand-up, right? You would dress up nice, you'd wear a tie, you'd be like, students from North Fort Myers High School are stepping into a ping pong championship coming up this month, and we're going to hear from some of their stories now.
And then Vince Marcucci
for Lee Schools TV.
Yeah, exactly.
I had so much fun in the sound booth.
Yeah.
I wish it's funny looking back then, I knew I loved sound then. I just didn't know. All right, I loved sound then. I just didn't recognize it because I would have delved so much deeper into sound then. Whereas I'm wanting to dive deeper into sound.
Talking into microphones like this.
I love just adding, different effects and playing with reverb and having multiple audio tracks. That's so much fun for me. But anyway, to answer your question, it probably took us several takes to get everyone to say, Lee Schools TV, your district, and then everyone would go, your story.
Yeah.
That was it was very, we had some catchy shit that we would do,
I was impressed. I was like, okay, wow, this is very professional.
And the people I worked with then, if I saw them now, we would connect. I think we'd connect pretty instantly because we worked hard in that job. We were cranking stuff out. We would be editing late. We would be, venting to each other about other stuff going on in our life. And when it was a bunch of high schoolers hanging out making a TV show, which was kind of fun.
Yeah, I know.
Kind of fantastic.
I was going to ask if you still have connections with them and if they've seen your work or if they're making stuff and if you guys collaborated in recent years. So
crazy. Cameron, who was my sister's boyfriend back at that time, he was maybe 2 years older than me. So when I started, he was also in high school and still in the same program, and super cool dude. He currently lives in Manhattan. No, he lives in Brooklyn.
Oh wow.
And he and I have been staying in touch since I moved to Brooklyn. He tried to get me some jobs, did not come through, but it's okay. He's like sticking his leg out for me.
He did it once before. It's fine.
Yeah, the one time he did it before, yeah, he got me before, but this time he's just such a generous dude and was like, oh yeah, let me try to get you in this job or this job, and gives me these, leads. But anyway, I know that he was great in coloring and post. Currently he works doing. Oh,
you did mention this to me before.
He does coloring, but also other kind of post related technical work on really old films. I'm talking the films that are like in celluloid. So he does restoration on them. He works for a nonprofit that I'm not remembering the name of right now, but he's doing cool stuff. And awesome. Anyway, I knew he liked post. So this most recent short film that I made, Pizza Chit, he was the colorist on it, and he kicked ass. He did great color. I'm excited because I haven't
seen the color edit yet.
Oh, it's great. The movie came out honestly great. I love it. I'm so happy with it. It's like, it's definitely nothing like any nature documentary I've made, but it is a really cool animal that came out of the collaboration of so many people, and I'm stoked with it.
Hell yeah.
If only you could make him a sandwich, Opie, then you'd be contributing to this household.
Opie can make a Scooby-Doo ass sandwich, I swear. No, literally. It feels like Scooby-Doo. I feel like Shaggy and Valentino's like Velma whenever you go in the car. And he's in the back seat and he sticks his head in between us like Scooby-Doo does. Yeah.
Raggy?
Raggy. Let's see.
I love Scooby-Doo.
Oh, so does Valentina. She's been watching the Mystery Incorporated show that came out like 15 years ago. It's pretty good. It's like a new spin on it. It kind of dives more into the psyche of the characters a bit more too. You see their parents. It's actually really fascinating. And crazy. Shaggy and Velma date.
Oh.
And then Scooby-Doo gets jealous.
Dude, what?
Yeah,
Shaggy and Velma date?
And it's voiced by Matthew Lillard, which is cool. He been voicing Shaggy ever since the movie.
Okay, I need to watch this. Yeah, sounds amazing.
HBO.
Okay, fucking HBO. Well, I don't know how I'll watch it then.
On RTV.
Yeah, give me the
on the couch that you're staying here for.
Cha-ching.
I'm sure Valentina would love to watch it.
Cool.
Opie, what are you chewing at?
He's like, I'm just eating my paw because I'm so hungry.
Opie. Stop. Opie. No. Okay. So we were talking about New York, Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
You currently live in Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
Compare. We've talked about it before. Last time you were in February, you had many things to say about New York. But if you could say briefly, and of course whatever you're comfortable with, people will watch this. How do you compare New York to Florida?
Well, I think it's easier to get depressed in New York. If I'm going to be 100% honest, from my point of view and my own, life, because growing up in Florida, I, was used to being able to walk outside, get sun on my skin, walk through the park, see bugs and see trees and see, bushes and flowers blooming all around me, all throughout the year. Even when it was cold, it was like, in the 40s or 50s here.
Yeah.
Occasionally we drop down.
There's still alligators in the lake.
Yeah. But even then I loved alligators. I love gators.
I love alligators, bro. Mm-hmm. I will never get tired of them.
Yeah. Like, take me to go see some alligators. Like, I'm not running. I'm getting closer.
Well, actually, we have a special guest.
But New York is like, New York City, because there are parts of New York, or much of the state is gorgeous.
Yeah, and upstate New York I've seen is beautiful. Even
like still south in New York, that's just outside the city, is gorgeous, but in the city, it's like pretty wild to imagine that this is, one of the longest running American cities, and this is the direction it's taken. It's gone to full, concrete jungle scale where, there are some parks And I was talking to someone today earlier who's like, yeah, I want to New York City. I'm going to miss the greenery, but there's parks. And like, I've heard myself say the same thing. It's like, yeah, there are parks, but like, you got to make time to go to those parks. And that includes like eliminating the 500 other things that you could be doing that day, whether it's hanging out with people, but mostly it's like trying to make money so that you can pay your freaking rent.
Yeah, I know. Rent's so
utilities.
Insane. And then food. And I mean, the plus is you don't have a car. You don't have to pay for that, but maybe that's the payoff, but still.
So when I visited 2 months ago in February of 2025, I was, going through it. Honestly, like...
It was rough. You came back, and I've never, ever seen you want to eat hamburgers and pizza and smoke cigarettes. I was like, what did New York do to you, bro? What is going on?
I was like, let's stop.
Yeah, you wanted to eat Steak and Shake and Culver's and Dairy Queen.
Yeah, I mean, like, maybe it was also just like knowing that when I go to Florida, I can just let loose on my discipline muscle, because in New York, I'm not buying food out, like I'm grocery shopping and making all of my meals. And, with cigarettes, I could go on that for a bit, but I usually just be like one a week, like max one cigarette a week. Because when I was in Indonesia, I was really smoking cigarettes then. Yeah.
Were you making them there though yourself, or were you buying them pre-made? I just asked because in Australia it was too expensive to buy them, so they would my roommates would just buy the tobacco and the papers, the skins as they call them.
Yeah.
And they would just roll it themselves, which I feel like is probably a healthier thing because you're controlling what you put inside of it. I mean, it's still nicotine and tobacco. Well, there's no nicotine, I guess, if it's just tobacco.
Yeah.
Maybe the papers have it.
There is a path that you could walk down in trying to weigh out like what is the healthiest way to smoke. But at the end of the day, you're taking smoke in your lungs, and that's the truth. That's a choice. I would just say that like Florida had its limits too, though. Florida, to me, growing up here and going to school here, I knew when I graduated college that I needed to leave and that I wanted to explore other places and get exposed to new worldviews. Yeah. I felt like I had gotten a lot of Florida and I was like ready to get out of there. And I knew that I knew at that point at the end of college that I loved the state. I love the nature of this state.
You have it all over you.
Yeah, I got a tattoo on me. I was like, I will come back here. And so I knew it would be my home. Home is a bit of a weird word for me, but like I knew that I'd come back and I could feel safe here.
You're like centered when you come back here.
Mm-hmm. Like even if I didn't have anywhere to live and I would just have to like, pitch a tarp in a forest, I knew what was in this forest. Like I knew what's out here and I know how I could handle it, Yeah. But, so New York, I think, is to me in my life, it's another chapter where I'm exploring somewhere new.
Okay.
And I knew moving there that there were going to be some rough consequences that I wasn't used to. But right now, it still feels like it's giving me more good in my life than bad. Even though, I'll talk some shit about it. I'll talk about, and I'll mention it's easier to get depressed there or whatever. But like, I moved there because my intuition was telling me to.
For opportunity?
Well, just you could say that. But I mean, I could move anywhere for opportunity if there was, New York, there wasn't anyone in New York who was like, come here for a job. Like, that wasn't that. I moved to New York a year ago and I was like, I would take any job. And I started working at a Target, and then I started working as a canvasser. Right. And then I moved to a YMCA. All within a year, I worked like 6 different jobs just so I could try to keep moving up the pay scale a little bit. And, so I can afford rent, and buy groceries and then hopefully get to a financially stable spot. And that's taken a toll, on my freaking mind. But the other side of that, besides the money and the work stuff, one of the things that pulled me there is that I knew I had a community that was already living there.
There's a lot of people from UCF that's moved up there.
Mm-hmm. And as an adult in my late 20s, as other adults in our late 20s, no, like this is a time of our lives where we are questioning, what do I do? Where do I go? Who do I love? Like, how do I love?
Yeah, because once you hit your 30s, it feels like, it's a whole new section of your life. Like,
where hopefully you're like
Yeah.
Maybe stable.
Yeah, you'd hope to have some stability going into your 30s.
Yeah, because I think I imagine one of the big parts of this is like in your 30s, that's when you're going to expect, just to break it down kind of into the rougher stuff, that's when you may expect, your body, you can maybe expect more body complications as you're growing older. You can expect more family complications, sad thing, or issues with relationships that you have grown. There's some real ass stuff that comes in your 30s, but I'm sure there's really beautiful things that happen in your 30s too. I just don't know about them yet because I haven't gotten there. Yeah. Like, one thing probably is recognizing friendships that have been going for, 25 plus years. Because once you get to your 30s and you're like, damn, we've been friends for that long.
I know. And also it's harder, I'm sure, to find friends. You probably mostly get them from work. And if you don't have good coworkers, or if you work from home even, probably hard to be social, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Well, you're a very social butterfly, so for you, it's probably not too hard.
I can be. I can also be a very antisocial butterfly. Today, I was working at the NZN for the Florida Film Festival, and I was in the merchandise, just like selling merchandise.
Yeah.
And most of the time, I'm like on my computer because nobody's coming up to the table, so I'm on my computer doing stuff. The people I was working with were chatterboxes, but like so much to the point where like they weren't even listening to each other.
Energy vampires. So your social battery was just low. That's why you had to go to Mead Gardens to recalibrate yourself with the nature in Florida.
On the way home, I was like,
yeah, when you said I'm stopping at Mead, I'm like, you had a rough day today, didn't you?
You know me, Matt. You got me.
Especially since you had to work super late last night and then super early this morning, like a quick turnaround. I'm like, yeah.
It's like, I'm stopping at the garden.
Yeah.
And you know what I did at the garden? I
meditated.
Well, I parked the car, walked like 15 feet away from the car because I left the windows down and everything, and I was like, someone might
the big grassy section.
Big grassy section. Took out a cigarette, not gonna lie, and then I laid in the grass, smoked a cigarette, and stretched. So as I would like put it in my mouth, and then I'd stretch my hips and then my shoulders, and then do a couple back stretches, and I just had in my headphones, I was playing beach waves, like sounds of like soft, like with like whoosh waves. Dude, that brings me from like 110 down to like 0. 0 is where I want to be, and I thought, it was nice to slow down that way. And that's,
you definitely are a Floridian then, if you need the sounds of the beach to calm you down. But that's good. I'm glad that you and you recognize what those things are. I don't want to say vices because vice is a negative term, but is there a positive term? Like, is there an opposite of vice or like a positive vice? Outlet, I guess. A self-soothing mechanism. Yeah, I guess so. Whether it be, exercise is one for me, even though I'm not really in shape, but running is and swimming even is very therapeutic. Yeah. And weightlifting too, but yeah, I think it's important to find what that outlet is to recenter yourself, especially when your social battery's low. Yeah, and going back to New York here, that's where I've been learning a lot about myself in that way. When you choose to put yourself in a kind of risky situation where you're not really comfortable, but you can survive, I think that's another way to inspire rapid growth. True. And I love rapid growth, baby. I love slow growth too, but like rapid growth turns me on. Yeah, no. Your LinkedIn is fucking crazy, bro. Like I lived in Utah and then I lived in New York and now I work in Florida. Okay, yeah. Speaking of Utah, I have another question for you. Yeah. So when you were in Utah, you were a counselor. According to your LinkedIn, you have a certain description about this Utah experience. Can you tell me specifically what were these backcountry meals? Hell yeah, great question. So we talking like thick pieces of ham steak or grits? Okay, so quick context. I worked as a field guide in wilderness therapy in Utah for a program called Evoke Therapy Programs. I loved that. Well, the year I was there, great work. They were definitely difficult times, maybe a little bit traumatic here and there, but overall, very beautiful life. And I loved that. I think it's a really important time in my life.
And I met wonderful people everywhere, from the students I worked with, to the staff I worked with, to my supervisors. Freaking lovely souls across the page. But part of that, right, is you'd work 8 days on, 6 days off. The 8 days on, you're backpacking with teenagers in the wilderness of Utah, which is mostly, desert to like, what's it, savanna.
Was it that part of Utah where they have those giant pillars, rock formations, or is that more north?
There are big rock formations. Yeah, it was to answer your question directly. In the summer, we would take more northern trails and be living up there. But then in the winter, when it got really cold, we would go to a more southern part of the field, where it was lower elevation, so it was warmer, so we didn't have to like deal with 0 degree nights or whatever. So when we were in the lower field, we would get a lot more rock formations, beautiful cacti, foxes were around.
I heard those things sound creepy at night. Foxes.
What do they say?
Foxes crying. What does a fox say at night is creepy.
Yeah, they can sound creepy. Their coyotes were kind of creepy sounding. There were also wild horses, wild cattle.
Oh, that's cool.
But anyway, the meals, so we'd have to make meals, right? Now, the students, we'd be working with groups anywhere from 4 students in a group to maximum would usually be around 10 students in a group.
Okay.
And that number of students would also change the number of staff that you had.
Right.
Something I loved about that job was they were great about their ratios. It was usually 1 staff to 3 students max. So like, if we had 9 kids, it's more like 1 staff to 2 students. If we had 9 or 10 kids, usually you'd have a 4-person staff team. 5 people was a little bit much, but 4-person staff team is great because everyone can cover different spots. And then usually 1 staff can step away if they need to cool down, which is super important.
Cool down temperature wise, or cool down because they're
mental
getting
health
kind
wise.
of like things that kind of heated.
Yeah, cool down mental health wise, because we're working with students through therapeutic journeys, which are triggering on their own, for the kids and for the staff, so, and it turns into a family environment out there every week you out. But anyway, the students, they would cook for themselves. Okay. So we meaning like they would teach each other how to cook and we would teach them how to cook. We would show them different, ways. And then the staff, we would cook for ourselves. Occasionally, we would do we call them family meals, and, we'd all work together cooking. Some of the students would cook, some of the staff would cook, but we couldn't do that all the time. And I think it's important to describe why, because students, the teenagers, they didn't want to fucking be there. And they would they could easily like spike a staff meal with dirt. And even if they didn't
spin it or something like that.
Yeah, I guess. And like, even aside from that, the staff might like something that they want to eat, something that the students don't want to eat, and that kind of thing. Students have preferences, staff have preferences. So we would just keep it like students eat, and the students prepare for themselves, staff prepare for themselves. Also, it teaches the students to really like feel bonded with one another. I think it encouraged bonding, whereas if the staff cooked for the students all the time, there's other things that could happen. So the students would they had a few different things they could choose from. It wasn't like a huge menu, it was usually they'd have a few basics in each category. And the staff would have the same things, but to be honest, staff could bring some stuff from outside, from outside of the field. Like we could bring a special sauce or something like that. And the students might get kind of annoyed, but like staff, the main idea is staff weren't really supposed to reveal that to the students or anything.
On a low key in the DL.
It's like, low key put that hot sauce in the mac and cheese. But also they could make hot sauce and mac and cheese or whatever too. But anyway, the main things we had were like different types of, so you had a pasta, rice, quinoa.
Ooh, quinoa.
And they also had bread, different types of bread, which they could use as all their base stuff. Then every day, there's important to get vegetables, and fruits. So they'd be given, for a few days, be given like mixture of vegetables, and they would usually depend on the seasons. We would try to stay in the season. So in the winter, they'd get broccoli and, cauliflower and stuff like that.
That'll be locally sourced? Or?
That's the idea, but I'm sure a lot of the times they were buying stuff from Trader Joe's, and just sending Trader Joe's stuff out to the field.
Gotcha.
Because a truck driver would bring it out. But to answer your question directly and kind of finish this wrap up, because I could go into this job forever. It's a whole different world out there, wilderness therapy. But some of the meals that I liked best making in the backcountry were
let's hear it.
R&B, classic rice and beans.
Okay, R&B.
Rice and
all right,
beans.
rice
And
and
I'm
beans.
talking dried refried beans. All you got to do is boiling water, pour the dried refried beans in, and then suddenly you've got a brown mush. Okay, you add that to the rice, you spice it up, and even if it's just like a mushy meal, if you just finished like a 4-mile like backpacking, hike with heavy freaking backpacks and angry students or annoyed students and like annoyed staff, that meal, that hot R&B hits you right in the soul, dude. And on top of that, let's talk about cheesies. Cheesies are when you just make a quesadilla. That's what they call them. And they just run a tortilla and they throw your cheese on the pan, or on the tortilla and then close it up. You can spice it up with special stuff, but yeah, I know you're hungry, so
I just give it to me.
I know you're slobbering right now. I like to bring out coconut milk in a can, and then I would usually just try to find a fun way to use that. Usually with the quinoa, try to make a curry thing. So if I could bring some curry spices.
You're also showing all these kids like what quinoa is and curry is, and they're probably like, "What the hell?"
Dude, one of my favorite memories is like showing this one kid. Oh my gosh, I don't know if I can say his name or whatever, but I showed this one kid how to break garlic so that you can you can use your palm on top of a blade to crush the garlic in order to peel the skin off quickly. And I remember for me, when I was learning how to cook, that was a big deal. And this kid saw it was a big deal.
Yeah.
He was like, whoa, I've always peeled garlic with my fingers and there's always so much work. You can just crush it real quick. And then weeks later, I came back to that group and that kid was running the kitchen. He was like master cook, and he was like just crushing up the garlic and throwing it in the pasta, and all the kids in the group were like, oh yeah, that kid makes the best pasta, like he makes great stuff.
Isn't that going to be so crazy if you learn 10 years from now or 15 years he's a
chef?
Yeah, he's this famous chef or something. You'd be like, oh my god, it's all because I told him how to cut and just palm garlic like that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, I probably wouldn't take that intense like it was all because of me approach, but I would be like, I helped. And that feels good when you can say I helped. Should I let him out, the boy?
He could, but he's just gonna realize that there's nowhere else to go.
I'm gonna come back in. All right, get out of here, bud,
because he wants to go to Tina's room, or he's hungry, or he wants to poop. We're almost done wrapping up.
Okay,
anyways, but he's gonna bust through that thing like no tomorrow, so I would say go ahead and close it.
Okay, last chance.
Unless you
last chance to come back in.
Yeah, I know you want to come back in.
We
go lay down.
Knew it. You scrub.
Go lay down.
You sweet boy. I know. Okay, I love you.
Let me go.
I love you. Yeah, give me what else you got.
I think we're almost done.
I'll catch you later.
I'll skip a few questions.
Go lay down. Go lay down. See you, bud. He's so excited to be loved. He's like, give me some attention.
You want food and you want to go pie?
Oh.
I know. Your episode's coming up. This is Vince's episode.
Interview me.
What do you want? Up.
Oh, that's. This is real love, people.
You're like, Dad, I'm hungry.
I love this.
Dad. What? What do you have to say? Okay, go lay down.
Ruby for that.
Siéntate. Go. Allez-vous.
Yeah, this dog speaks Spanish.
You gotta speak three languages to this dog. Go lay down. Go.
Siéntate.
Go lay down.
Aquí.
Up your plats. All right. Let me see. Let me just brush through this real quick.
Gracias, mi amore.
Okay. Okay, we're jumping around a bit.
Yeah.
I know we kind of already wrapped up a bit of the Lee County stuff, but I just thought it was really cool that you won that award for it, and that it was presented to you by the America's Funniest Home Video guy.
I know, it's ridiculous. It's like kind of weird.
I was like, wait, is that guy? I heard his, like, what?
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was for Teaching and Beaching.
Yep.
National Student Production Award, which is also, we would just call him a Student Emmy.
Yeah, I saw it, and you have like an award somewhere that has the Emmy engraving on it. Yeah, it's pretty cool. This might be a larger answer, but on the topic of food, when you were living in Italy, How does the pizza there compare to Domino's?
Super flavorful. A lot more. The spices are a lot more subtle. The crust is thin. It's a little crunchier.
Sounds like shit.
No, it's
It's really. Yeah, I was
really
a bit. I
good.
don't like Domino's at all.
Yeah. Domino's it does the job for me
Pizza's pizza, right? But yeah, no.
until it's not.
Until it's not.
Once you're in Italy, pizza is not pizza.
Yeah, pizza
It's
is not pizza.
You better, take your time and savor
Knife
it.
and fork, motherfucker. So
I
it
think
was
I
in
saw someone use a
Sicilia.
knife and fork. Yeah, I still use my fingers, but it was funny though. When I was eating pizza there, it was in the mountains. It was in the Alps. I was working in the Alps on a farm for most of my time in Italy, and it was like a sustainable farm, and we would go like once every few weeks. We went out to the village.
Okay.
Left the farm and go to the village. And in the village, someone had a brick oven that they made pizzas in, and it took a really long time. I remember that. I remember I was so hungry, and I was around all these
You
people.
have to work for your food, huh?
Yeah, I was around all these people who were speaking fluent Italian. My Italian is
Some
like
old
so
generation
broken. Yeah, and I was like,
grandmothers.
I'm so hungry and I'm tired,
Yeah.
but like, I'll hang,
Do you guys have Uber Eats here?
And every once in a while, someone comes up and is like, "Oh, you're from, the United States? Like, that's so crazy. Like, what's it like over there, And then they'd listen for a little bit of time, and then they'd turn and talk with their friends in Italian again. And then I'd just be like, all right, well, I'll just, be sitting here waiting for my pizza until someone else wants to talk to me.
Yeah.
I could try and talk to someone in Italian, but at that point in the night, my brain was so exhausted that, like, it wasn't working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I should have asked you, I said that as a funny bit, Domino's. But how does pizza there in Italy compare to New York pizza? Especially as someone who's made a short film about pizza.
Oh, pizza. Yeah. Honestly, same things I'd say is like, the pizza I had in Italy that was just more like Napolese or like from
Like the other
Naples?
northern.
well,
part?
I was in the northern part, but most of the time I was eating the style of Naples, which is in southern Italy. And that pizza is, most of the time I had it was thinner. Like I said, the spices were more subtle, but they were so good. Yeah,
Sure,
it
the
was great.
ingredients are so fresh.
It was great pizza, dude. All the tomatoes in Europe were better.
Yeah,
every tomato.
everything just tastes so much better. Especially when I was in Syracuse almost 10 years ago. The produce, the meat, the seafood, the gelato, like everything. It's just, my God, the bread. And it's not, they have like 17 different versions of prosciutto. I was just like, oh my God.
They just appreciate it more, dude. They just freaking appreciate
my
the
European
food.
side comes out every time. At this point, I'm not even at my new job for a full year, and already I have the reputation of food because we had these. So I'm kind of going off topic a bit, but every other Tuesday we have lunch catered. We had Firehouse subs, and a third of the subs were vegetarian, which most people were complaining about. And I mean, I get it, but also it's not that bad if you know what to do. So the next day we had the leftovers, and I already knew no one was going to eat those veggie subs. So I did on the morning of going to the office. I got a little Tupperware, had a little bit of olive oil, some garlic powder, some oregano, some salt. I think that's all we really had to make that. But mix it all up, let it sit there. Use that when I got to the office. We're having lunch, and I'm toasting the veggie sandwiches. And someone says, "These would be so good if I had Italian dressing or like a Italian herb dip." And I said, "You mean like this?" In my Tupperware, and oh my God, yes. So I feel like of all the people in the office, I might be the one to kind of doctor up my food and take because some people don't want to wait for the toaster oven. They want to microwave their stuff. No,
dude.
If I'm going to eat something, I'm going to wait for it. It's going to suck, but it's going to make it so much better.
That's the short-term reward versus long-term reward, baby.
Exactly.
Like, put in the work, get the better result on the far end.
Okay, well, I want to say thank you for joining me on my podcast. I know we might have rambled a lot, so at this point we might not have any viewers at this time code of the video, but I think it was fun. I actually learned some stuff about you. Did you have fun?
I had fun. It's nice to reminisce.
Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to say? Anything for the future? Anything you want to plug?
Where do you imagine these will be living?
YouTube.
Oh, word. Gotcha. I should ask that in the beginning before I was cursing. But
Okay, I'll just bleep it
anyway,
out.
whatever. It's cool, I guess. I would say that I'm grateful to my family for helping me become who I am today. My mom, my dad, and my 2 older sisters, they've done a lot to support me, and none of the stuff that I'm doing today would be possible without their support. So
yeah.
Love you, Marcucci family.
Oh, love you too, Marcucci family. And I want to say one more thing. When I was doing a deep dive into researching my guest to form questions, I learned something that I was surprised. I was like, whoa, you were the homecoming king? Like,
No. Oh, no.
That's
How did it
crazy,
find
bro.
me here, bro.
I was surprised, but also not surprised. And you looked so, I'm like, wow, you're popular. You're cool, man.
Oh, man. Yeah, it was kind of silly. There was some silly. I like kind of cringe and some shyness from it.
Yeah, well, before you continue talking about this, since you were the king, I have something for you to wear, even though we're at the end of this episode.
Dude, don't. Oh, what is this? Okay. King of the castle.
King of the castle, very nice.
Sitting in a chair.
Nah. I should have given that to you at the beginning of the episode, but
That's all right. I'm glad you
Yeah,
did.
I
I'm
don't know if
glad
it's
I did not
comfortable.
wear that the entire time.
Burger King, yeah. So I just thought that was pretty cool.
Thanks,
Nice.
Matt. Thanks
Yeah.
for having me. It's been an honor speaking with you.
You're welcome. It was nice talking with you.
Cha-ching.
Okay, now it's time for his to have his food. All right, Opie.
Opie says I'm hungry.
Are you hungry? Okay. Thank you guys for watching. My posture is terrible.
Long live cucumbers.
Man, fuck cucumbers.
It was a good boy.